Welcome to the network, the educational podcast designed to help our community navigate the four areas of life that I like to call the funky four corners. I've had the opportunity to interview some of my favorite people with one goal in mind: to help the spiritual, physical, mental, and financial health of our people as we navigate this thing called life. Subscribe to the network. You never know, you might need it. Am I glitchy on your end? Am I glitching on your end?
No, you're fine.
Okay, I'm good. All right, listen, everybody. In the words of Dana Elaine Owens, y'all might know her on TV as the Equalizer, or you might have known her from the movies as Cleo, right? Because she was setting it off. But that's Queen Latifah. Listen, a woman can bear you, break you, take you. Now it's time to rhyme. Can you relate to a sister dope enough to make you holler and scream? And that's exactly who I have in here on my team, Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir. Listen, I'm your host, Michael Prejean. Dr. Sinegal-Decuir is back here to bring you the funkiest 15 minutes in Black history, also known as the History Quarter. Now, you know how we do, Doc. We like to give flowers before we do anything. So who are you giving flowers to while they can still smell them?
I think I'm going to give it to my identical twin sister, Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir. She is my girl. She has been with me through thick and thin, and as they say, she knows where all my bones are buried. So I'm going to give it to my best friend and my sister, Shannon.
Listen, we're going to do that again because you weren't on the screen, because I forgot to flip us. But the good thing about that is I can just edit this out.
Okay.
All right. So, all right, Dr. Sinegal-Decuir, you know how we do. We give flowers before we do anything else. So who are you giving flowers to while they can still smell them?
I have to give flowers to my identical twin sister, Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir. She is my girl, my ride or die. And I tell you, she knows where all the bones are buried in my life. And I love her to death. We have an amazing relationship that has grown so much as we both become adults. And I cherish her and I cherish our relationship. So to my twin sister, Shannon.
There it is. If you didn't know, Dr. Sinegal-Decuir is a twin. Now, continuing with Women's History Month, Dr. Sinegal-Decuir, I want to talk about Stephanie St. Clair, okay? One of the most fascinating figures in Harlem history. She was a powerful force during that era. So when people hear about Stephanie St. Clair, they sometimes only hear the sensational parts of her story. So what deeper lessons about strategy, leadership, and community protection are often missed in the story of Stephanie St. Clair?
Well, you have to know her story to understand who she was. She immigrated to the United States in 1912. She was about 12 years old. When she gets to the United States, after, she has relationships with men that turn out very tragic for the men, I might say, because she always overcame. And usually they always died. But that's a whole nother story. But she ends up making her way to Harlem, which is the Negro capital of the world at this time. You have the Great Migration going on. You have all of, African American people from the Deep South that are going to New York to try and find better opportunities. And here she is. She is in New York City, and she has another boyfriend at this time, and she gets into actually selling narcotics. So she sells narcotics for a little while with her boyfriend, and then eventually that doesn't go well. Her boyfriend dies after an argument that they have. Needless to say, I believe she was involved with that. But she takes $10,000 of her money and she puts it into the business of running numbers, right? The lottery, the black lottery in the African American community. And what she found out at first, starting in the lottery, was that it was in existence, but it was small scale. It wasn't organized, and she was an organizer. She was a leader. So she took that $10,000 of her little drug money and she flipped it into millions of dollars. She helped the African American community in ways that you can't even imagine. And you're thinking, how could she help the African American community when she was a criminal? She may have been a criminal, but she was, as they say, for us and by us. She was all about the African American community and empowering African American people in a way that would change their lives. So you played the numbers, 5 or 10 cents, and she had an entire system. She had runners who would go and collect your money, collect your numbers that you wanted to, place. Then she had people who would run the money, add it all together, make sure she had everybody's bet correct. And then she was the banker. She held all the money. When it was time to pay the money out, she made sure that that money was paid out on time and very fast. So she gained the trust of the people as being a woman who was all about her business. She did not play with people's money and she didn't want nobody to play with her money. Okay. So she had a whole system and she knew, being a woman in this kind of business, in this gangster life business that was really a man's world, that she had to have you protection. She had to have people around her who were loyal to her. But another thing with her, she was so smart. She used the media of the day, which was the black newspaper, the New York Amsterdam, to put ads in the newspapers to warn at the African American community about corrupt police officers. And she would use little codes. She would say, officer so and so is on this corner and you need to be aware, And again, this allowed her to form a reputation of a woman who was protecting the neighborhood as well, even to the detriment of her own protection. She wanted to make sure that her people were protected. Now, everything kind of started to get rocky and shaky after Prohibition. And I say this because, Prohibition is between 1920 to 1933. During that time, you had mobsters like the Italian mob, the Irish mob, and so on that was running alcohol. Once Prohibition ended, their money started to dwindle because now alcohol was legal everywhere and you did not have to, sell it illegally. The mob then started looking at Harlem because they saw that she was making a lot of money and they wanted in on this money. Well, Stephanie was like, we are not having that. So she had her lieutenant, who was her right-hand person, Bumpy Johnson, who later on went on to have his own drug empire, right? We know about Bumpy Johnson later on, but this is where he started. He protected her. Now, she ended up marrying a man, later on. I would say this is around 1938 or so. The man did his thing and cheated on her. She found out and she shot him and she was placed in jail for 2 years. When she came out of jail, she still had a ton of money, but she decided she was going to retire. So that was around 1940 and she handed the business over to Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy Johnson was very, very smart in taking her business and even making a compromise with the mob. At this point, the mob actually took care of the person who was Dutch Schultz, who was after all of her investments in Harlem. The mob killed him. And Lucky Luciano, who I know you guys have heard of in history, he becomes a person who now has some kind of dealings within Harlem. But his dealings within Harlem did not go past Bumpy Johnson. You have to go through Bumpy Johnson in order to get anything done, even if you were the mob in Harlem. And this, of course, was all set up because of Stephanie St. Clair and how smart she was, how calculated she was, and how she cared so much for the African American community. So her story is not just about a woman who was a gangster and made money. She was a woman for the people. She protected her community. And even though running numbers at the time was illegal, she made sure that the African American community, they got their money, right? They were able to invest with the money that they won off of the lottery. The entire system at this time was corrupt. So why not start a business that's going to help your people? So
It's
that's
very, very, yeah, very, very, very interesting. So I guess there's a couple of things, but let me ask my follow-up question first. So what does the story of Stephanie St. Clair reveal about how Black communities historically organized power and influence?
you know what? I would say throughout history, even when you're looking at it, African American communities actually helped each other out so much, and we united so much in history to help each other. And I think this is a story of aid. This is a story of helping the community that did not have anything. And so you could actually take your 5 cents and then make maybe $20 or so during the Depression time when it was extremely hard for African American people to make a living, right? It was a time where you had multiple families living in one room. And so she saw the need of the African American community. And the thing is, again, as I said before, numbers was something that was prevalent throughout, history, but now it's in the Black community. You don't have to take your 5 cents and go to the Italian community and play the numbers. You can play the numbers in your own backyard. And
Mhm.
that is going to help. The money from that is going to help provide investments in the community because people are now having money to spend in the community. And so it actually, helped everyone. It was a win-win situation. It's what we had to do in order to survive. And like I said, there was unity in the African American community at that time.
Yeah. I often think of a Jay-Z lyric when I hear stories like that. I think the song is Say Hello to the Bad Guy. And what he says is um, we selling dimes because we ain't doing fine.
Mhm.
So he's saying, like you said, that this is something that's being done in order to survive, right? So I often think about that when I hear stories like this. All right, Doc. Um, here's what I want to ask you. Here is what I want to ask you. So, agree or disagree? Political, nope, sorry. Entrepreneurship has always been a form of resistance in Black communities.
Agree.
Okay.
100%.
100% agree. Okay. How about this one? Learning history can change how people see themselves.
Agree 100%.
So, like she told you in the other episode, go buy a textbook. Go buy a textbook. Learn that history so you can see yourself a little bit different, right? Just, a little bit more today, a little bit more tomorrow. Just continue to learn that history about yourself. All right, Doc, one more question before we wrap this thing up and get out of here. Give us one practical piece of wisdom that you would give someone watching or listening right now who wants to better understand history and then use that history to improve their life today. What you got for us? Give us some good medicine.
I would say you need to go back and study the movements in African American communities. Look at Marcus Garvey. Even look at Booker T. Washington and how he promoted Black owned businesses and enterprises. We kind of have to go back to an era where we were segregated in order to understand that we don't have to be segregated. Yes, we don't have to be segregated now, but we need to go back and collect some of those gems from people. We need to understand that we need to build within our own community and we need to unify in a way that is going to bring us economic power. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the money, you don't have the power.
Money and the power. Money and the power. Listen, if you tune into this podcast regularly, you have heard it said from three different collegiate professors. We had Dr. Nigel Baptist on. He said, the way that we solve our problems, community. We had a sociology professor, and Professor Michael Ayers on, and he said, the answer is community. Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir, the world-renowned Dr. Sinegal-Decuir, just told you, go back and study those movements that were in the community, because community is our answer. Listen, everybody, before you dip out of here, hit like, subscribe, smash the bell so you never miss an episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us that 5-star review. It helps us to grow the community. Follow us on IG at podcast_with Prejean. Check the show notes for the good medicine. This is The Network, your spot for elevating mind, body, spirit, and finances as we navigate this life together. My name is Michael Prejean for the Dr. Sharlene Sinegal-Decuir. Until next time, need y'all to do one thing and one thing only, and that's make love the culture. Peace, y'all.